Thank you, Viraj. We have got the live streaming alert. Jaya, right. Unmute the audio and just turn on your video and just check whether it's visible.
Audible, Manishan?
Excellent. Video and voice is clear.
What about the screen?
Screen also clear.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to sort out my background. This is Sarah.
Yes, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll give a few more minutes for more people to join us, and we'll be back in touch. Thank you.
Greetings from Ilife project, Sri Lanka. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. It's a great pleasure and privilege to meeting you all at this virtual learning event. On behalf of Ilife project team, we warmly welcome you all for this remarkable virtual learning event. Especially honorable steering committee members, honorable respective government stakeholders, Mr. Sivasudan, DFAT, Australian High Commission, World Vision International Global colleagues, World Vision Australia colleagues, senior leadership team, World Vision Lanka, international consultants, World Vision Lanka colleagues, and my dear friends. Our final milestone is presenting our overall project performance here today, which Ilife project cycle explore with more exciting learning at a glance. I am glad to inform you that the hard working of our team and their tireless passion led Ilife project towards achieving results. Midst of the COVID-19 pandemic situation, especially during the transition strategy. Today, with the collective pride, the Ilife project would like to share the achievements of the desired goal. That's none other than the support of the stakeholders who contribute during this journey. I would like to emphasize the final evaluation report. The Ilife project is the major evidence that contribute to this great learning, especially addressing gender and disability inclusion, jointly allowed the team towards more holistic approach and towards the achieving greater impact on individual and community, especially challenging attitudes and behavior that particularly benefited women with disabilities and other women as well. The major project success was increasing female participation with the project and community structure. Also integrating through learning process and economic development. Based on today's event, I kindly invite Jay Rajan, project manager, to share the site of the project inner voices. Jaya, over to you.
Thank you, Rogas. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. Following up with the Rogas one, it's my pleasure to brief on what are the key things project has been achieved during our project journey. In the project, sorry to interruption. Yeah, it's my pleasure to brief on what are the key things the project has achieved during the 5 years of the journey. Since the project has completed its journey of the 5 years, we have conducted an independent evaluation throughout our project, what we achieved. In terms of the evaluation results, it shows overall our project effectiveness we successfully achieved, while we have the beneficiary has increased their annual mean income by the 107%, and also we have achieved 86% of the all reported indicator out of our overall indicators. In addition to that, project also cover different type of the beneficiaries, including government officers. Altogether, 29,103 beneficiaries, including 8,101 direct beneficiaries, were benefited from our project. Out of that, 16,150 per people or household members are engaging in the economic activity. In addition to that, the project also working with the behavioral and attitude changes among the household and community level. Project also make up 19% of the person with disabled in the project implementation, comparing 30% and 50% of male and female beneficiaries respectively. And also, the project has increased the stakeholders' understanding and knowledge on the inclusive economic empowerment, how they are going to working on that. In last, rather than continue my explanation, it would be good to hear community voices on their changes and achievement. So, I'd like to invite you all to enjoy the small video that really what happened in the field. Let's enjoy the video. Kaushan, over to you. Thank you very much.
That time, on the third month of the year 2018, I was selected as a beneficiary of the World Vision program. Firstly, I joined in a production group. On my own 3/4 acre land, I produced groundnut. From the World Vision program, I got training for value addition production and started producing. Before that, I didn't have any income to raise my 3 children. I lived with the question what I am going to do next. That time, I should say, World Vision gave me a hand and lifted me up. What would I do? I even attempt to commit suicide. In that specific moment, World Vision supported me. I got lots of training. I was involved in community change discussion. They gave me the strength and how to get out of the situation. I got out of that, and to make this bigger, me and my children did a lot of dedication to bring us out of that situation. Person with a disability. My name is Sivasodi. I am being a person with a disability. I am getting profits from a business. I was outcasted by the community, exiled by people. I experienced torture. I didn't have a single person to give me even a 10 rupee to buy proper meal. They gave me name board, production hut, machine, table to do my groundnut business. I am in the DPO, S40 and groundnut production group. If we give a machine, will you able to work? They asked. I said yes, and they gave me one. After that machine came into my house, I feel like I gained huge fortune in my life. I used to crack open the shells with my hands with a sore back. After I got the machine, I have the confidence to shell 3 to 4 sacks of groundnut for a day. Before that, I not used to go out. I stayed indoors. Then after World Vision took me in and showed me the path. I don't prefer to stay indoors anymore because I shouldn't stay indoors saying I can't see, and I should involve in an occupation. Now I felt like crying after hearing World Vision is closing down. Otherwise I wouldn't have cried and would have made you happy. I felt sad about that.
මම ආබාධිතයෙක් කියලා කිව්වනේ මම මේකට ඉදිරිපත් වුණාට පස්සේ මගේ ආබාධිතකමත් චුට්ටක් නැගී හිටියා. කියන්නේ ඒ අමාරුවත් මට නැතුව ගියා. ඒ වුණත් මම මේකට සම්බන්ධ වෙලා මම සතුටින් කරන හන්දා මට ඒකට ඇඟට හයියක් ආවා. මට ඒක කරගන්න පුළුවන්. මට ඒ අමාරුව තේරෙන්නෙත් නැහැ.
Today these communities have a hope for a new dawn as they emerge from their past sufferings. The smiling faces of these people reflect the achievement of the iLife program.
Yes, thank you, Kaushan, for your videos. Thank you for you all for the patience. Now I am handed over to the Miluka, our IRDM project officer, World Vision Lanka, to taking over throughout our program. Miluka, over to you.
Thank you, Jeff, for sharing with us some of these inspirational stories to give us a glimpse into what the iLife project has been able to achieve over the years. And also, I think it's a perfect way to set the stage for this event. So thank you for that. And thank you to all of you who have been able to join us today. I'd like to encourage you to utilize the chat box to share any thoughts, concerns, or questions you may have to the project team or the presenters, and they should be able to respond to you through the chat box as well. So first up, I'd like to introduce Sarah Mills, who is the portfolio lead for Value for Women, and she'll be talking to you about the learnings and impact on inclusive economic development through local value chain development. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, and good morning and hello to everybody. I'm feeling quite emotional after that video. I was just thinking that, yeah, I've been involved with this project since the start, and I now it's older than my child, so it's quite an interesting sort of reflection point. Thank you for inviting me. So Value for Women has been involved with the project from the start, mostly supporting the Outcome 1 activities, so the local value chain development activities, and providing support and technical assistance on the value chain analysis, and we also conducted the knowledge, attitudes and practices survey at the very start, which kind of shaped the sort of subsequent activities. So if we could go on to thank you. So just to do a brief overview, I think everyone has some familiarity with the project already. So at the start of the project, we worked with World Vision. We had a sort of 1-week workshop to undertake a gender and disability inclusive value chain analysis, the GDVCA. And this was a week-long workshop that we facilitated. And during that period, we sort of co-developed a criteria to assess the viability of potential value chains and livelihood activities. So there was, I think, about 15 elements of that criteria, but profitability, demand, and market opportunity and access were weighted the heaviest, as it was felt that these were the most important elements to ensure success and sustainability beyond the project period. After the whole team, we drew up an initial shortlist of value chains and products. We then engaged in external consultants to carry out a more detailed analysis of the shortlisted options. And on the basis of that, we had the final selection of manioc, mushrooms, and groundnuts. As the project kind of wore on, it became evident that value-added products would create additional opportunities for women and people with disabilities to engage in and benefit from. And so I think it was about 2018, the ilive team conducted a one-day workshop with various project participants and beneficiaries to identify several value-added products from the initial VCs. So that's where we've sort of landed on these subsectors here under the initial value chains. Okay. So next slide, please. Thank you. So I know there's a lot going on this slide, and I think anyone who's sort of been familiar with the project knows that there was an awful lot happening, and it managed to achieve a huge amount. So I just wanted to walk everyone through this graphic just to make clear sort of how the different elements fitted together in terms of the value chain activities. So on the left, we have the beneficiary, and they interacted with various groups and interventions that the project set up. So we have the Savings for Transformation groups, we have the Sea Change activities, also the Journeys of Transformation, and the DPOs. And beneficiaries were sort of variously involved with a combination of those interventions and activities. Beneficiaries were also formed into producer groups thematically, so by product, by value chain. And there was a lot of interaction between those producer groups and other external actors, including local enterprise forums, other private sector actors and stakeholders and government agencies and private buyers. And you can see it on the sort of top right, who also bought produce directly from the producer groups. The producer groups and the value addition centres also worked closely together. And the value addition centres, ownership of the value addition centres was transferred to the producer groups at the end of the project. And the DPOs were also involved with micro projects, which are essentially, this is the arrow at the bottom between DPOs and micro projects. And micro projects are essentially value addition centres run by DPOs, so specifically providing opportunities for people with disabilities. And then on the far right, we have the market agents and local market facilitators, and they are a key element of the sustainability of the value chain activities. And they provide support to the producer groups in terms of inputs and services, and also linking producer groups to output markets. So the LMFs, the local market facilitators, are focusing more on a local and village level, and the market agents are sort of higher level entrepreneurs who are dealing at a national and regional level. And throughout this, you can see at the end, we have sustainability and visibility, and they're sort of playing a key role in maintaining those beyond the project period. So that's a brief kind of high level overview of how some of these different pieces of the project fit together with regards to the value chain activities and interventions. So looking at the, sorry, can I just pause? I did have some notes to go through sort of specifically some more information on the producer groups and the LMFs and the market agents. Would that be useful, or do you want to skip ahead to the sustainability? Jaya? Okay.
I think it would be really useful. Please do. Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry, thank you. Okay, so In terms of the producer groups, 85 were formed with over 3,000 members, 66% of whom were women and 15% were people with disabilities across the 3 value chains of groundnut, mushroom and manioc. So the purpose of the producer groups was to facilitate collective bargaining and aggregation of produce. And as I mentioned, the ownership of the value addition centres was also transferred to the PGs. So the PGs are a key pillar of the sustainability of the actions implemented under ilive. And they also have a management structure that's been designed to support their continuation, so group members are able to continue to access market information and linkages. The local market facilitators, or the LMFs, are people who are sort of entrepreneurial people who are identified from the PGs, and they provide local level market linkages for PG members for a fee or commission for their services. In total, at the close of the project, there were 16 functioning LMFs, 2 women with disabilities, 8 men without disabilities and 4 men with disabilities. Now this role was developed specifically to overcome some of the market barriers identified in the CAP, the Knowledge, Attitudes and Practices survey at the start, especially barriers for women and people with disabilities who, as we know, face additional challenges in accessing markets and participating in livelihood activities. So the NMFs facilitate longer term linkages of the PGs to output markets. Now, the fee-based nature of the model is intentional, and that is to ensure that it creates a viable financial incentive for the LMFs and market agents to develop their service, to deliver their services. So the market agents are similar, but they are operating at high level of the value chain, for example, in larger quantities or with more value-added products or with regional and national markets. So the need for the marketing agents was identified during an analysis of the LMF model in 2019. And this revealed that at the time, the range of skills and attributes that was being asked of LMFs was too broad, and it was necessary to split the role into 2 more targeted tiers. So that's how the model developed into these 2 levels. The value addition centres were developed to create income generating opportunities, especially for women and people with disabilities, in food processing and value addition. So the employment opportunities tend to be preferable for women and people with disabilities in particular to primary production, because it's better suited to those with limited access to productive resources and time. So, I'm sorry, I'm not sure who needs to mute. It's a bit distracting.
Yeah, sorry, Sarah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned, the project set up the VACs, but transferred the ownership of them to the producer groups by the end of the project. And the VACs are managed by a local entrepreneur who's usually a member of one of the producer groups. And they're responsible for managing the VAC, and they negotiate an hourly rate to pay employees within the PG. They negotiate that rate with the PG. In total, by the end of the project, 27 VACs were set up, and that provided employment opportunities for 90 people, 91% of whom were women, 34% people with disabilities, and 33% women heads of households. And then finally, we have the sort of private sector linkages, and those were between the project stakeholders and existing private sector actors, so wholesalers, shops, government agencies, hospitality, etc. And these were brokered and developed by the project as activities progressed. And going forward, it's expected that market agents will continue to do that role. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, are there any questions on that before I move ahead? I know there was a lot going on. Okay, I'll move on. So in terms of the sustainability, as I sort of mentioned from the previous graphic, this is based on sort of these key main components. So the local market facilitators and the market agents who are providing sort of input and output linkages for the producer groups, the VACs, which are providing the employment opportunities and value added products for market, the producer groups, and then also at the sort of far left end of the graphic, we had the capacity building of government agencies on behaviour change methodologies. So ensuring that the behaviour change methodologies, the sea change, the journeys of transformation and main care, etc., can continue to be implemented going forward. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. So this is a sort of high level overview of some of the key learnings and recommendations to come out of the project. So key learnings on the slide, and then I'll go through some recommendations verbally. With regards to the value chain analysis and the product selection, it became clear that it's important to consider value addition kind of earlier on in the selection process, as these create employment opportunities which are particularly suitable, as mentioned, for women and people with disabilities. Value chains and value added products must also be profitable for LMFs and MAs, who are often dealing in several different products, and obviously they will prioritise products that are more profitable for them. So initially in the criteria, we just had overall profitability of the product itself. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there was opportunity for the LMFs and MAs to participate and benefit equitably. What also came through was that private sector actors were less interested in inclusion as a selling point, and so demand for products must exist in and of itself. So meaning, I think there was maybe some expectation that private sector actors and buyers would be keen to engage with ilife products because of the sort of backstory, because of the inclusion element. But it seemed that this was kind of less important in terms of marketing. When looking at the LMFs and the MAs, it's important to plan for the recruitment early on, and also the training and profitability for LMFs and MAs. And it's really important to get the timing of the sort of training and onboarding of LMFs right to align with production timelines and also sort of demand. There was some attrition of LMFs at the beginning, partly because they were sort of recruited a bit too early. And it's also important that so it's important to manage the expectations of the LMFs and MAs, and also be explicit about the business case for inclusion to ensure that they are providing services for underserved groups, particularly women and people with disabilities. And then looking at the business case for inclusion, I think this is a relatively common finding, but it seems that buyers often have reservations about the quality or hygiene of products produced by people with disabilities, and so it's important to overcome that and address that early on. In terms of recommendations, looking at the value chain and product selection, it's important to involve people with local in-depth knowledge of markets and value chains during the initial value chain analysis to help with the shortlisting and selection of specific products based on existing demand at the start. The criteria that was developed for this project, it's important to contextualize that and adapt it as needed. So, for example, include opportunity and profitability for local for LMFs, and more heavily weight value addition opportunities, for example. With regards to LMFs and market agents, future projects implementing a similar model should identify if these tiers are necessary early on in the model so that it can be planned for, and integrate gender equality, disability and social inclusion into the model. For example, developing appropriate capacity building or support program to identify and train women and people with disabilities to fulfill the MA role effectively, because at the close of the project, all the MAs were men without disabilities. and also ensure that all LMFs and MAs operate in inclusive ways to provide services to marginalised groups and are clear on the business case for inclusion, and thus why serving marginalised groups is also a benefit to them. And in order to maximise the success of the LMF and MA model, future intervention should carefully consider the timing of the recruitment and training to align with the availability of products. They should also ensure relevant and regular training and explore alternative modes of operation. For example, instead of working individually, LMFs who work in pairs, which could facilitate the increased participation of women and people with disabilities because they could divide and share roles and responsibilities, thus reducing the burdens, for example, on travel and allowing for complementarity. And potentially overcoming the issue of sort of expecting one person to fulfill many different roles within the LMF role itself. And it's also important to ensure that field staff are intentional and deliberate about connecting LMFs with women and people with disabilities, as this was somewhat inconsistent across ilife, and connecting them with relevant support organisations. And with regards to the business case for inclusion, it's important to ensure high standards and packaging and having the necessary public health certifications as early as possible to help anticipate and mitigate for any reservations that might come up. Next slide, please. Could we have the next slide, please? Great, thank you. So looking at some more key learnings and recommendations with regards to the value addition centres, we found that creating paid opportunities was extremely valuable and valued, especially for people, for women and people with disabilities. But there was also an issue of access to finance for the VAC managers, and so it's important to also explore ways to de-risk the management of VACs to ensure that there's a broader range of people who are able to fulfil that role. Looking at internal capacity, key learnings there include that the initial training on, for example, that Value for Women provided on the gender and disability inclusive value chain analysis. So the initial training capacity building was somewhat siloed at the start and also suffered from staff attrition. And it was also found that project managers found play a key role in modelling inclusion and leading by example, and that was a really important way to help build the capacity of other staff and also ensure inclusion. With regards to access to finance, the S40 groups did manage to leverage a large amount of savings and loans within the project period, but the size of the loans was not big enough to bridge the financing gap for those who needed larger loans. So looking at recommendations for the VACs, instead of sort of setting up in the actual centres and doing a lot of work there, in future to sort of save on resources and support sustainability, future initiatives could look to identify existing factories and processing centres that could provide employment opportunities for women and people with disabilities and provide training on disability confident and gender inclusive employment practices to the owners and managers of those facilities. It's also important to explore potential to use project funding to subsidise the costs of reasonable accommodations for gender and disability inclusion. So this could include pre-financing, for example, say that producers can access inputs or underwriting some of the costs of crop failure or subsidising costs of equipment or accommodations in factories. Future initiatives could also provide support to potential employers on how to build inclusion and reasonable accommodation costs into business models, and thus making visible the financial benefits of inclusion. For example, greater employee satisfaction leads to more productivity and retention and reduced costs associated with recruitment, retention and attrition. So recruitment, training and attrition. And also future interventions could look to identify and facilitate linkages to formal financing providers to enable investment and growth in the VACs to overcome some of the access to finance issues. In terms of capacity building, future interventions could implement a structured training and induction program around gender and disability inclusive market systems development for all staff, with reference materials and regular refresher trainings to ensure all relevant project staff are aligned on the inclusive value chain approach. And where possible, include other external stakeholders in these trainings as well, for example, other private sector actors, LMFs, MAs, and also include MFIs, potentially. And this training should be carried out kind of on a regular basis and ensure that everyone has a sort of same baseline level of knowledge and understanding. Management should also regularly assess the capacity needs of staff and address these accordingly, for example, through facilitating internal skills or knowledge transfer or identifying external resources and expertise. In terms of access to finance, it's also important to identify and build links with appropriate, reputable, formal financial service providers to overcome financing gaps. And work with financial service providers on the business case for inclusive practices to prove that women and people with disabilities are reliable customers. I think that was everything. I went through that all very quickly. I hope I'm on time. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, you're perfectly on time. Thank you so much for sharing those valuable insights with everyone. And if anyone has questions, please, again, do write them in the chat box, and Sarah and anyone else can respond to you as well. Thank you again, Sarah. Next up, we have Kate Doyle, who is a Promondo Fellow, and she will be speaking to us on the learnings and impact on gender inclusion within the Ilife project. Kate, over to you.
Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you can hear me well. As Sarah was pointing out, there were, multiple different interventions within this project to really promote, inclusive economic development. And in addition to, of course, providing opportunities for women to be included, the program very much recognized that more needs to be done to address gender attitudes and gender norms. So that is sort of what is socially considered acceptable roles for women and men in society in order to be effective at addressing some of the gender constraints and barriers to women's participation in economic development. So recognizing that we need to work with both individuals, with households, but also with community members to shift, attitudes and practices about what is considered acceptable work for women, about addressing sort of the imbalance in who is doing the unpaid care work within the home, as well as addressing sort of power dynamics between men and women, and attitudes and use of violence against women. And so there were multiple interventions at these different levels within the program, including the one that I'm going to speak about today, which is called Journeys of Transformation. But there was also World Vision's Sea Change model, which is, creating community conversations by engaging, Ilife project participants, but also broader community members, as well as a specific outreach called Men Care to men in the community. And Promundo is an organization that promotes gender equality and prevents violence against women, particularly by engaging men and boys in gender equality work. And that was really the crux of our partnership with World Vision on the Ilife project. So that is what I'll be speaking about today, which is about how the program went about specifically engaging men as allies in women's economic empowerment at the household level. And that very much recognizes that, even if women are engaged in the program, they might face barriers at home, in their relationship with their partner that can influence their ability to, fully benefit from and participate in economic development. Whether that is regarding, household decision-making and who has a role in making decisions about finances, whether that is whether women are able to even participate in the activities in the program, as well as other things like, violence against women, and particularly, the inequitable burden of unpaid care work within the home, so household tasks and childcare. And so at the beginning of the ilife project, Promundo and World Vision worked together to adapt a program called Journeys of Transformation, which is a particular curriculum that is designed to work with couples, so men and women together, to transform their attitudes and behaviors related to gender within the home. And the curriculum includes 11 sessions. These are participatory activities, group discussion, and skills building that engage men in unpaid care work and in promoting healthier, more equitable couple relations. And this was adapted based on, learning from the CAPS survey and formative research that was done at the start of the project in order to adapt this existing curriculum to the Sri Lankan context, and particularly to the goals of the ilife project. And after adapting the curriculum together, World Vision and Promundo trained 57 facilitators to be able to implement this curriculum in the ilife project areas. And that included 41 women and 16 men, including 21 persons with disabilities who were trained to facilitate the sessions. And the sessions targeted couples who were participating in the Savings for Transformation groups. So mostly recruiting them via the female partners. So the woman was participating in an S4T group, and then she was invited to participate along with her husband in this 11 weekly sessions Journeys of Transformation program. And many of the women and men who were participants were also, engaged in other ilife interventions, such as producer groups, but were recruited directly from the S4T groups. And it was sort of the most targeted intervention addressing gender, attitudes about intimate partner violence, couple relations, and unpaid care work in the ilife program. And as I mentioned earlier, it was complemented by the community level efforts through Sea Change and Men Care. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the findings that we have through qualitative research, reflections with Journeys of Transformation participants and facilitators, and what we found in terms of how Journeys of Transformation, benefited the families who participated, and particularly the work to engage men as allies in women's economic empowerment. And so out of the couples who participated, what we found is that the intervention did lead to greater support for women's economic participation among men. So changing their attitudes about, whether women should be working outside the home, and particularly men's, support and encouragement for their partners' participation in economic activities. So women would say that, previously they faced some barriers and challenges from their partner in being able to, attend the S4T groups or to be able to participate in paid work opportunities. And through Journeys of Transformation, they were able to better understand, the benefits of their partner participating in these activities, and women received greater support from their partners to be able to participate. We also saw that the intervention was really crucial in creating greater couple communication. And we've seen this in a number of settings, that the intervention, directly within the sessions, but also through homework assignments, really encourages men and women to talk about, what is their vision for their family, to talk about household finances and decisions related to finances. And that this is really crucial in not only creating sort of a shared vision of what the goals they have for their family are, and how, women's paid work participation contributes to that vision, but it's also an opportunity to then create greater involvement of women in decisions regarding household finances. And I should say that we, qualitatively, we do see that women are more involved now in household financial decisions. But I think in what we've seen in many settings is that through creating greater couple communication, there's greater involvement of women, but not necessarily sort of equal decision making. So I think there's more work that can be done to really transform how decisions are made in the household. But we do see that women and men are communicating more about, and women are more engaged in the conversations and decisions about household finances. But sometimes that might simply be being aware of what the male partner is going to decide rather than having an equal say in those decisions. What also came out, though, very much is that participants had a greater understanding of how they can work together as a team, and how sharing household responsibilities can contribute to the goals that they have for their family. So we see that by talking to participants about, what is their goal for their family and particularly for their children, that's an opportunity to help them to set goals together, but then to help them through activities such as, how to create a household budget, how to care for children. That also creates opportunities to see how they need to work together to be able to achieve those goals. So men, for example, taking on some of the unpaid care work, such as household tasks and childcare within the home, and supporting their partners to do paid work. And through the sessions, men and women both saw, the benefits of working together and seeing themselves as a team, and sharing household responsibilities. And I think one of the things that we saw in the ilife project, but also in other settings, is how sort of using parenting and being a parent, it can be an entry point to creating those conversations in a way that sometimes simply trying to engage men, on unpaid care work or on women's paid work participation might not be. So it really helps the participants to really think about it through the lens of, being parents and achieving family well-being and development, and how working together within the home, but also outside of the home, can contribute to those goals. We also saw that there was, changes in attitudes about violence against women, and some improvement with women reporting reductions, particularly in physical violence and conflict. But I think more attention is required, and greater focus on violence prevention could be incorporated within the existing curriculum in order to be more effective. But we did see, for example, that the session on conflict resolution did help male participants to sort of understand how they could take a break and step away from, an argument rather than resorting to using violence. But I think more work can be done there. And there's a quote there on the side, that earlier I was not willing to let him do any household work, but now I have learned that we can both share the workload and save time, and we can use the time on the tailoring to make some profit. So I think it's worth highlighting here that, changing gender attitudes is important for both men and women. So while this intervention is really about engaging men as allies in women's economic empowerment and engaging men in taking on unpaid care work, we also see the importance of changing women's attitudes about men's participation in unpaid care work. But I think also the quote highlights how the intervention helped both men and women to see the benefits and importance of working together, and how that can save time and can help them to have more time to be able to be with their family, but also to use that time to earn income. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share just some key learnings sort of more broadly on what we learned about adapting and implementing journeys of transformation within the ilife project. And I think the first one is just the importance of working with couples beyond one-off training. So, the importance of engaging men and women together in interventions that are designed to change gender attitudes and practices within the home is really critical. And both men and women who participated in journeys of transformation really appreciated the opportunity to participate together. And I think in particular, men really appreciated the value of being included in the intervention, and couples appreciated that it was 11 weekly sessions, and the sessions were, about 2.5 to 3 hours in length. So it is, quite an intensive intervention. And they really appreciated that time to be engaged and supported by the facilitators, but also by the peers within the group over a longer period of time. And I think that they saw that as really beneficial and something that was unique to this project. And we also see that, building communication between partners is really essential for improving relations and engaging men in support of women's economic empowerment, but also children's well-being being, as I mentioned before, sort of a critical entry point for promoting that change, that working with couples and creating conversations between them about what they want for their family and particularly for their children can then be an entry point to talk more about roles within the home, power dynamics within the home, and starting to address some of the particular gender and power dynamics within the home that can be barriers to women's ability to effectively participate in economic development, to make decisions about finances and things like that. One of the other things that we saw is, that through a number of, intentional adaptations, there is also the ability to be more intersectional and to be, inclusive of people with disabilities within the intervention as well. So from the very start of adapting and implementing journeys of transformation, we're intentional about including persons with disabilities as facilitators, and for recruiting persons with disabilities to the groups as well. So about 1/3 of the participating couples included one person with a disability. And that was, in addition to that, reasonable accommodations and some financial and transportation support was provided to make it easier for persons with disabilities to participate. And I think beyond just simply allowing them to participate, what we saw in the qualitative research also is that, broader journeys of transformation participants, it helped to shift their attitudes towards persons with disabilities because they were interacting together within the groups. And I think particularly they commented on, seeing persons with disabilities as, empowered individuals who are also economically engaged in the community and things was quite important in building and transforming their own attitudes as well. Next, one of the things that was really encouraging about the implementation of journeys of transformation was the sort of feedback from government partners and other civil society partners in the ilife project areas towards journeys of transformation. So there was quite a lot of interest in being able to, implement journeys of transformation within the work that is ongoing, through Women Rural Development Society and through other, government officers. And so at the end of the project, 92 government officers, as well as a number of civil society partners, were also trained on how to implement journeys of transformation in their own work. So we see that as quite an important step towards sustainability and creating a broader set of actors who are equipped and engaged in trying to address the sort of gender and power dynamics that can hinder women's economic empowerment. And I should also add that a number of disabled people's organizations or DPOs were also trained to implement journeys of transformation and have reached, several, more than 100 additional couples, particularly trying to engage more persons with disabilities. So there's sort of ongoing efforts beyond the project to keep journeys of transformation implementation going and, help to promote sustainability. But finally, I think we saw that also additional efforts to reach men beyond just journeys of transformation and the sea change, the community conversations, were required to effectively engage men at the community level. So additional efforts to reach men directly on their own were included in the project later on through something called Men Care, so specific outreach to men around changing attitudes and practices, particularly related to unpaid care work. And so I think that, is something to take forward in the future as well, in thinking about how to effectively engage men at a broader level in the community. And I think that is where I will end there, but thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the presentations.
Thank you so much, Kate, for sharing with us the various project interventions and how that led to attitude changes within the community. Next up, we would like to invite Isabel Calvert. She is the advisor for the Inclusion Advisory Group for Christian Blind Mission in Australia. And she'll share with us a few words on the learnings and impact on disability inclusion within the ilife project.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that introduction. So, yes, I've been involved in the project in a couple of capacities, most recently with CBM, but was involved right from the beginning, as many of you know, with World Vision Australia in a different role. So I'm so grateful to be able to be here at the very end of the project, having been here at the beginning of it. And yeah, just am so grateful to be at this final learning workshop. CBM's role in the project has, as I mentioned, CBM was engaged from the beginning, actually, from the design workshop, not in the development of the concept, but from the design workshop, and played quite a significant role, as I recall, in changing the design from being a little bit siloed in terms of disability inclusion to much more mainstreamed. So that was a really important step right early on in the beginning of the project. CBM's main role has been to provide extensive technical advice to ensure that all of the approaches and models and activities mainstream disability through them. So there was a lot of work involved in adapting local value chain, working with Value for Women, adapting the value chain model so that it was disability inclusive, also working on the knowledge, attitudes and practices survey to again ensure that it was disability inclusive, and then working on various models like the Savings for Transformation model, which was not Savings for Transformation at that point, it was a savings group model and became Savings for Transformation because it became disability inclusive. Also working with the gender team on the Journeys for Transformation model and Sea Change. CBM's role was also provide extensive resources around disability inclusion and to help build the capacity and to support the team, communities, facilitators and DPOs to build their capacity and strength around disability inclusion. I'm going to talk principally about the strengths and some areas for further strengthening in the project, some additional reflections that CBM has taken out of the excellent evaluation that is just being finalised now, and then just a word of appreciation to round off. So the key strengths that we found was that the focus on disability inclusion right at the beginning of the project, at the project design, was instrumental in making this what it was. And we have to acknowledge Ali Wong here, who's in our group today, who designed the concept note. It was adapted later at the design workshop, but it was right from those very early stages at the concept stage where we were looking at a twin track approach and mainstreaming and an inclusive approach to disability inclusion. Doing all of that foundational research and ensuring that all of those models and tools had been adapted so that they were inclusive was very, very important. And adaptation of the project approaches, and as I mentioned, S4T has been adapted to be a leading inclusive savings for savings group model. Engaging people with disabilities, of course, was very strong through the project and has been a key focus of the project, and people with disabilities, both in organisational strengthening of DPOs and engaging with disabled people as role models, including as facilitators and even as evaluators. So as you know, the evaluators both are people that live with a disability and have brought a real sensitivity to their work, as have the facilitators brought that sensitivity to the work in ilive. That's made a very big difference, I think, in this project. Dedicated staff time and having a full-time disability advisor on the team and allocating budget to disability inclusion is absolutely essential. Many projects we've seen do not actually allocate budget to disability inclusion and assume that it will just trickle down in some sort of absorptive way. It doesn't. We really have to invest in disability inclusion, and ilive was a model in how it really committed to investment in disability and dedicating the staff time to ensure that there was lots of mainstreaming, lots of capacity building throughout the project. The clear organisational mandate and the very targeted approach were really critical to making this project what it was. That organisational mandate trickled through essentially from the donor initially, but also because of the commitment of World Vision Australia and World Vision Sri Lanka to this. Without that, your disability inclusive project wouldn't work. So the organisational commitment to this was very high, and it was instrumental in bringing about the successes of this project. The project also had a very targeted approach. In the beginning, it might have been a bit wider, and over time, because of the flexibility that was also built into the project, it became more and more targeted as we went along. And this was another key factor that hasn't actually been listed here, but the flexibility that was built into this project was instrumental. It was very much a learning project to some extent. We all learnt so much from the beginning when we were originally talking about disability inclusion and what that means to where we've got to today. There was so much learned along that time. And because of that flexibility in budget, but flexibility in approach and understanding from World Vision Sri Lanka and World Vision Australia, so that we could actually build on those strengths and increase that capacity as we went along, was really critical to the successes that this project has achieved. I pick out this statement from the evaluation, which I particularly loved, and it said that ilive is an exemplar able to influence, advise, and support other stakeholders, which was fantastic. We saw a lot of that through the project to be more inclusive. But also this statement, it did that from a position of credibility, legitimacy, and experience. And that is principally because there was so much commitment to understanding how to do this right, understanding how to do disability inclusion well, and learning from the mistakes along the way, allowing that learning to happen. The M&E framework, for example, was so strong with 111 indicators, 26 or 23 or something on disability itself. A lot of work in those indicators, but what we've got from that is so much data and so much knowledge to be able to extract all of these lessons to take forward in our future programming. I really encourage you all, if you haven't had the chance to do it yet, is to really deep dive into the evaluation. It was one of the best evaluations that I've ever read. And again, as I mentioned, I think there is a disability sensitivity in that evaluation, which I've not seen in others before, but amazing outcomes in terms of disability inclusion. 19% of participants in ilive were people with a disability. That is exceptional. And 36% increase in incomes of people with disabilities who participated in producer groups. I think we were aiming for 30% at one point, and we were getting 36% increase for people with disabilities in those groups. Please do deep dive into that evaluation because there's so much that has come out of that. Sorry, next slide. So there were some things where the project could have been further strengthened. And one of them is something we find in all projects, is that when you're doing disability inclusion, you're mainstream, you're taking a twin track approach, mainstreaming and taking tailored introducing tailored activities around disability inclusion. The tailored activities are often very sensitive towards disability, obviously, and there's a lot of resource that goes into those tailored activities. And the mainstreamed activities tend to not invest in the same way in terms of building capacity of everybody on the team around the mainstreaming activities. I think probably we needed to ensure that everybody in each of the teams had a certain baseline level of capacity and understanding around disability inclusion and related to their specific tasks and responsibilities. So that's something that we can take on ourselves for further support that we might give to projects like this. And we had a fantastic DIP planning process. So the detailed implementation plans, that annual planning process was really probably the first time in my experience that it was such a comprehensive process where everybody was included. And that was to ensure, to try to ensure that there was mainstreaming across all components and that we took that holistic approach to all of the activities. However, with disability, I think there was probably challenges there because it was, sometimes quite challenging to ensure that disability was mainstreamed in outcome one around economic development. So, there needs to be probably more investment, maybe more time given to ensure that at that DIP planning process, that disability inclusion could have been inserted more into those other components. The second area where I think we could have strengthened our support and the Ilife project could have been strengthened is ensuring that there is regular capacity strengthening in disability inclusion and particularly targeted to specific responsibilities in each of the components. And as I say, there was Ilife had a disability advisor, and there were lots of work that was done on tailored components of Ilife. But there was also an expectation that others in the team would also have the capacity to be able to undertake disability inclusion activities and take a disability sensitive lens to their work and all the other components. And sometimes that didn't quite happen. So I think learning from this is that we really need to keep investing in capacity building across all components of a project. Luckily in Ilife, there was a really very healthy budget around M&E and learning. I'm not sure that there were as many opportunities as there could have been to actually look at specific areas of capacity building for specific tasks and responsibilities. So that's something that we can all think about in future about how we might be able to ensure that continuous learning happens through the project for specific activities. One of the challenges I think we all had at the beginning of this project was thinking about beneficiary target numbers in terms of disability. And this is a very complicated task. It's getting globally across all kinds of projects across the globe. Assessment of disability is incredibly challenging. There are greater tools being developed now since Ilife was started actually over that 5 years. The Washington Group short set of questions has evolved more, and there are other tools that can be used to help develop that targeting and refine that targeting better. But we did take some time, as I recall, kind of getting to that point where we really understood how many people we should be targeting. And we also have to accept sometimes that working with groups of people with disabilities, it can take longer to work with them because we need just extra time to be able to communicate well, to be able to ensure that people with disabilities have access to different activities and services and opportunities within the project. And also there are additional barriers that exist in every community and every project. And sometimes we don't necessarily know all of those barriers at the beginning of a project. So we have to kind of be flexible and accept that there will things that will emerge as projects develop. So we need to allow a bit more time generally when we're engaging in disability inclusive programming. And I think one of the key lessons, and I think World Vision has taken a lot of learning from this actually, from the Ilife project, in terms of how to do reasonable accommodation and how we address accessibility in a project. There were some challenges in terms of barriers to accessing things because of procedural issues and getting things done. We need to continue to challenge these in our organizations to help our organizations understand that these are additional barriers, process barriers that limit the engagement of people with disabilities. So we need to ensure that there are clear guidelines around this in our programming and ensure that we engage with all stakeholders so that they understand the necessity to remove these barriers. Next slide, please. There were a number of additional reflections, particularly that had come out of the evaluation. And again, I really encourage you all to deep dive into this because there's so many lessons from a World Vision Australia perspective, from a Sri Lanka perspective, and from CBM's perspective. And we certainly will be taking more time to deep dive into that evaluation and unpick some things so that we at CBM improve how we engage with different stakeholders. One of the things that the evaluation did was attempt to do an analysis of the cost of doing disability, which was really interesting. This is something that we had suggested be done during the research phase, but it's great that it actually was done in the evaluation. And that cost came out to be about 11%. That is aligned to what we would normally say it would cost to do disability inclusion in any project. So usually around 10%, depending on what that sector is. Obviously, infrastructure projects are more. But yeah, doing an analysis of the cost of disability in this project was really interesting, and I'm incredibly grateful for the learning that comes out of the evaluation in that regard. The only thing I'd want to say about that is that it's really important that any conversation about doing disability is spoken about not as an additional cost, it's just simply the cost, just as including gender has a cost, it carries a cost for that. It's not additional cost, it's just essential costs for doing this kind of work. And we must always think about the overall return on investment. And this is what I particularly liked about the evaluation, is that it talked about the cost of doing disability against the overall return on investment. And the fact that we're getting something like 36% increase in incomes on for people with disabilities who have engaged in this project easily, and the overall return on investment was enormous. It easily offsets any cost that might be associated with doing gender or disability inclusion. Some additional reflections can be around the communication around impacts of disability inclusion. I think, well, obviously the S4T, the adaptation of S4T was an excellent example. What happened in the beginning of the rollout of the savings groups was that people with disabilities were not being included in those groups. And as we know, savings groups are voluntary groups, they're self-selecting groups. And it turned out that the first cohort of savings groups did not include people with disabilities because of all the stigma that's attached to whether people with disabilities can earn an income, whether they would be able to repay their loans in the savings group, whether they would be good members to be in this group. And because it's a self-selecting group, community attitudes to disability had to be addressed before we could even attempt to make this inclusive. So it was with this disability lens that the savings group model was transformed into what it is today, Savings for Transformation. That makes a huge impact on programming, on so many individuals across the World Vision family, I know, and across the globe. I can't tell you how many times in recent years I've talked to various World Vision officers around the globe who are now saying that they are implementing Savings for Transformation, which came out of Ilife. So it's an enormous impact that simple adaptation of that model, let alone all the other adaptations that took place in ilive, adaptation of that model has had a massive impact on individuals and World Vision across the globe. I just want to encourage World Vision to communicate that well outside of ilive. I'm not even sure that, well, I know that CBM did not understand the full impact of the transformation of the savings group model. I arrived in CBM about 6 months ago to discover that they hadn't actually understood or were aware of the significance of that impact. So I am promoting ilive and its savings for transformation model every opportunity I have. It's fantastic. I really encourage ilive and now World Vision Sri Lanka, World Vision Australia to really communicate those great successes well and broadly and widely to the world. The other additional reflection I had was on the number of indicators. There were an enormous number of indicators, 111, which I know meant a lot of work for the M&E team and the team as a whole. But what that did was produce this amazing wealth of data that, you know, we could draw out and form so many learnings from it. And we could tell such a great story. It was because of those indicators. And while I know that was painful through the life of the project, it has meant that the evaluators had so much to work with and have been able to tell this amazing story. The last reflection I'd like to mention is about the diversity of types of disability. I know that increased later in the project. In the beginning, there was a conservative approach to inclusion. And I just want to, and you know, I also had a conservative approach to inclusion right early on in the project. But I want to encourage all of us as we think about disability inclusion to remember that, you know, people with disabilities are no more homogenous than any other group in society. They're very diverse and they come with all sorts of different assets and contributions and insights that can be made to contribute to our projects. So I really encourage us to keep thinking about diversifying the types of disability when we do disability inclusive projects. I will stop there and I welcome any questions, but I just wanted to take this last opportunity to just express appreciation from CBM for the opportunity to engage in this project. As I mentioned, this has provided a great deal of learning for CBM, and we want to deep dive further into the evaluation report. So we will be engaging with the evaluation team to understand more about how we can improve our support to different projects, but also the learning that just came out of it in terms of taking you know, a twin track approach, in terms of mainstreaming, in terms of having a holistic approach to economic development. We really, really do hope that this has been a reciprocal learning process. I hope that World Vision has gained as much from this experience from CBM as CBM has gained from World Vision and from the rest of you, from Promundo and from Value for Women and all of our other stakeholders. So my final word is that, yeah, we valued the insights of the evaluation. They were absolutely fantastic, actually. One of the best evaluations, as I say, that I've ever read. Certainly at my time at World Vision, it doesn't compare. It was an excellent evaluation. And the evaluators really did bring a sensitivity towards disability to this work, which I think we might not have had they not had lived experience. That's it from me. I just want to maybe end on a note of personal appreciation for having been involved in this project for so long, and you know, so much appreciate and so grateful for this opportunity to be here at the last learning event for ilive. I've made some very, very good friends that I know will be lifelong friends through this project, and learned so much myself and set me on a different career path. And it's been very, very interesting, and I'm deeply grateful for ilive for that. So I'll leave that there. Please do drop any questions into the chat box.
Thank you so much, Isabel, for that wonderful presentation and for sharing the tremendous success the project has had on making this ilife project disability inclusive. And we have also certainly appreciated your support as well as CBM support throughout the life of this project. So thank you for that as well. Next up, I'd like to introduce Sharon Pereira, who is the Director of Field Operations for World Vision Lanka, and he'll share his perspective on World Vision Lanka's organizational learnings from the ilife project. Sharon, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Milika, for this opportunity. Good day to all of you. I consider ilife project as one of the unique and learning projects for World Vision Lanka. We listened to Zera, Isabel, and Kate, and they shared with us many learnings, very specific learnings on different components. Let me share with you a few organizational learning from ilife. We know this project is a gender and disability inclusive economic development project. The learning in the inclusivity is, unlike the other projects, the equal status has been given to all the three components of economic development, gender, and disability, without just considering gender and disability as mere cross-cutting themes. This consideration has paved us the way to go deep into these components and to reach out to the right target groups in partnership with many stakeholders. So that is one learning we had from ilife project. We had a very high-level steering committee, including our high-level government authorities, district secretaries, to support the project implementation. Responsible government authorities gave their full support through this steering committee to find the solutions for the challenges we faced during the implementation. It was an effective platform to ensure the transparency, the visibility of the project. It was a very good platform for mutual learning as well. Another learning is beneficiary-focused local value chain analysis was actually another learning from ilife. Women and PWD were intentionally focused when considering the local level value chain analysis. S4D project model was piloted with ilife project. As a result of the successful learning, we were able to scale up the project model by taking it into our local economic development technical program for the new country strategy we developed. World Vision Australia supported us with overseas consultants from CBM, Value for Women, and Pramundo, linking them with our technical and project staff. It was a great opportunity for us to develop the internal capacities while implementing a project. Basically, we could learn by doing and by engaging. The ripple effect of mainstream of gender and disability into this project is very high. We experienced the recognition of the vulnerable categories of people having the capacities to be socially and economically active by many entities. They are now consulted for learning sharing of different project approaches like JOT, C chain, etc. Another organizational level learning is the very close relationship the project team had with the SO program officer, particularly from the beginning with Isabel. Program manager had a, I think, weekly call with the program officer. It was amazing, and it created a very good understanding of the project between two parties and ensured the smooth operations throughout the project. So that is something we learned out of this project implementation. Having a separate outcome for learning in the project itself created the learning attitude among all stakeholders of the project at different levels. So therefore, we could intentionally capture learning and incorporate some of the learning into our new grants, and few other countries too, I think, applied iLife learning into their projects. iLife project had a socialization workshop with beneficiary representatives and major stakeholders every year to refresh their plans and get their endorsement to the yearly program plans. We normally don't have this component in other projects. This is a very good learning in terms of program accountability, as it created an opportunity for information sharing, consulting the stakeholders and the beneficiaries, ensuring their participation, and also getting their feedback, especially from the beneficiaries and the stakeholders. We also could learn how effective the incorporation of certain approaches like JOT, C change, and MenCare for desired change of an inclusive project in terms of behavior and attitude changes. This is something that we can think of in our future projects, as we have many evidence and materials from iLife project. Another learning that I can mention here is our technical advisors and specialists for cross-cutting themes working closely in one project highlighted and developed our internal capacities. It also made us realize the potentials we have as an organization, even for sharing with other like-minded agencies, and positioning ourselves among donors with evidence of impact for income and influence. So these are few learnings that I captured and I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon, for sharing your thoughts on that. Next up, I'd like to invite Mr. Mariadas Jebamarugan. He is the Assistant Divisional Secretary for the Manthai East region, and he'll speak to us a few words on the inner voices on project impact for the marginalized community. Over to you.
Good morning and good afternoon. I would like to speak in my national thank you. Actually, மாந்தைகளுக்கு பிரதேச செயலகமானது முல்லைத்தீவு மாவட்டத்தில் இருக்கக்கூடியான ஒரு பின்தங்கிய யுத்தத்தால் பாதிக்கப்பட்ட ஒரு பிரதேசமாகும். இது வந்து கூடுதலாக யுத்தத்தால் பாதிக்கப்பட்ட பெண் தலைமைத்துவ குடும்பங்கள், அது மட்டுமில்லாமல் மாற்று வலை உடையவர்களை கொண்ட பல்வேறு குடும்பங்கள் எங்களது பிரதேசத்திலே வந்து வாழ்ந்து வருகின்றார்கள். ஆகவே இவ்வாறான சிச்சுவேஷனில் வேர்ல்ட் விஷன் நிறுவனத்தினூடாக iLife ப்ராஜெக்டின் ஊடாக நடைமுறைப்படுத்தப்பட்டிருக்கிறதான செயற்திட்டங்கள் எங்களது பிரதேசத்தில் இருக்கக்கூடியதான இவ்வாறான பயனாளிகளுக்கு, குறிப்பாக பெண் தலைமைத்துவ குடும்பங்கள், அது மட்டுமில்லாமல் மாற்று வலு உடையவர்களுக்கு வந்து இவ்வாறான செயற்திட்டங்கள் அவர்களது வாழ்க்கை தரத்தினை வந்து அதிகரிப்பதற்கு பல்வேறுபட்ட முறையிலே வந்து உதவியாக அமைந்திருக்கின்றது. இதிலே வந்து நாம் குறிப்பிட வேண்டிய விடயம், அவர்களது வாழ்க்கை தரத்தினை என்று குறிப்பிடுகின்ற போது அவர்களது வருமானத்தை அதிகரிக்கின்ற வழி ஒன்றாக இருக்கின்ற நேரத்திலே அவர்களுக்கான சமூக அந்தஸ்து, சோசியல் ஸ்டேட்டஸை வந்து அதிகரிக்கக்கூடியதான ஒரு ப்ரொஜெக்டாக இந்த செயற்திட்டம் காணப்படுகின்றது. அத்துடன் இதில் வழங்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறதான பல்வேறுபட்ட பயிற்சி நெறிகள், குறிப்பாக சொல்ல வேண்டும் என்று சொன்னால் ஜேஓடி ட்ரைனிங் போன்ற செயற்திட்டங்கள் இப்ப இந்த பயனாளிகளுடைய நடத்தையிலே ஒரு மாற்றத்தை உருவாக்குவதற்கு மிகவும் உதவியாக அமைந்திருக்கின்றது. அது மட்டுமில்லாமல் இந்த செயற்திட்டத்தின் மூலமாக நடைமுறைப்படுத்தப்பட்டதான பல்வேறுபட்ட ட்ரைனிங்ஸ் ப்ரோக்ராம், உதாரணமாக எக்ஸ்போசர்ஸ் விசிட், டெக்னிக்கல் ட்ரைனிங், அதே போல ப்ரொடக்ஷன் ட்ரைனிங், மார்க்கெட்டிங் ட்ரைனிங் போன்ற செயற்திட்டங்கள் பயனாளிகள் தங்களது செயற்பாடுகளை வந்து மேலதிகமாக புதிய விடயங்களை கற்பதற்கும் தொடர்ச்சியாக தமது தொழிலை வந்து மேம்படுத்துவதற்கும் மிகவும் உதவியாக அமைந்திருக்கின்றது. அது மட்டுமில்லாமல் பயிற்சி நெறிகள் மக்கள் தங்களது வாழ்க்கையிலும் தொழில் ரீதியாகவும் ஏற்படக்கூடியதான சவால்களை வெற்றிகரமாக முகம் கொடுப்பதற்கும் இது வந்து உதவியாக அமைந்திருக்கின்றது. அது மட்டும் இல்லாமல் இன்னொரு விடயம், எங்களது அலுவலக உத்தியோகத்தர்களுக்கும் வேர்ல்ட் நிறுவனத்தை சார்ந்த எங்களது பிரதேசத்திலே குறிப்பாக எங்களது பிரதேசத்திலே பணியாற்றுகின்ற உத்தியோகத்தர்களுக்கும் இடையிலே நல்ல ஒரு ரிலேஷன்ஷிப் ஒன்று இருக்கின்றது. இது வந்து பல்வேறு சந்தர்ப்பங்களிலே எங்களுக்கு மிகவும் உதவியாக இருக்கின்றது. குறிப்பாக செயற்திட்டங்கள் தொடர்பாக ஏதாவது முரண்பாடுகள் எழுகின்ற போது இலகுவாக தொடர்புகளை மேற்கொள்ளக்கூடியதாகவும் இது தொடர்பாடுகளை நாங்கள் மேற்கொண்டு நாங்கள் செயற்திட்டங்களை வெற்றிகரமாக மேற்கொள்வதற்கும் எங்களது அலுவலகத்தினுடைய உதவி எப்பொழுதும் அவர்களுக்கு இருந்திருக்கின்றது, அது இருந்து கொண்டு வருகின்றது. அது மட்டும் இல்லாமல் எங்களது பிரதேசத்தில் இருக்கக்கூடியதான சிறுதொழில் முயற்சியாளர்கள் அடையாளம் கண்டு அவர்களை வலுவூட்டுவதற்கான செயற்திட்டத்திலும் வேர்ல்ட் விஷனுடைய ஊழியருடைய பங்களிப்பானது எங்களுக்கு பேருதவியாக அமைந்திருக்கின்றது. அது மட்டுமில்லாமல் நாங்கள் கடந்த காலத்திலே எங்களது செயலகத்தை அடிப்படையாக கொண்டு, அதாவது எங்களது பிரதேசத்தை அடிப்படையாக கொண்டு நாங்கள் டிவிஷனல் லெவல் என்டர்பிரைஸ் ஃபோரம் ஒன்றை நாங்கள் உருவாக்கி இருக்கின்றோம். இதிலே பல்வேறுபட்ட தரப்பினர்களும் இதில் பங்காளிகளாக இருக்கின்றார்கள். குறிப்பாக எங்களது செயலகத்தினுடைய உத்தியோகத்தர்கள், அது மட்டுமில்லாமல் இத்துறை தொடர்பான ஏனைய அரசு திணைக்களத்தை சார்ந்த உத்தியோகத்தர்கள், எங்கள் பிரதேசத்தை சார்ந்த சுயதொழில் முயற்சியாளர்கள், அது மட்டுமில்லாமல் வேர்ல்ட் விஷன் மற்றும் ஏனைய அரசு சார்பற்ற அமைப்புகளும் இந்த போரத்திலே பங்கு பெற்றுகின்றார்கள். இதனூடாக எங்களது பிரதேசத்தை சார்ந்த முயற்சியாளர்கள் தங்களுக்கு தேவையான முயற்சி சம்பந்தமான விடயங்களை கலந்துரையாடுவதற்கும் நிபுணத்துவ ஆற்றலை வந்து பெற்றுக்கொள்வதற்கும் இந்த போரமானது உதவியாக இருக்கின்றது. அது மட்டுமல்லாமல் முயற்சியாளர்களுக்கு இருக்கக்கூடியான சவால்களை அடையாளம் கண்டு அதனை எவ்வாறு நாங்கள் தீர்வு காண முடியும், டெக்னிக்கல் வைஸாக அல்லது ஏனைய பிராக்டிக்கல் ஆக நாங்கள் அதனை எவ்வாறு அடைய முடியும் என்பதனை வந்து இந்த போரத்தின் ஊடாக அவர்களும் கற்றுக்கொள்கின்றார்கள். அதை நாங்கள் நடைமுறைப்படுத்தி வருகின்றோம். ஆகவே இந்த தருணத்திலே நான் இந்த செயற்பாடுக்காகவும் நான் மீண்டும் ஒரு முறை நன்றியை கூட விரும்புகின்றேன். அது மட்டும் இல்லாமல் iLife ப்ரொஜெக்டின் ஊடாக பயனை பெற்று வருகின்றன பயனாளிகள், குறிப்பாக இந்த ஹியூமன் ஃபேமிலிஸ், இவர்களுக்கு இன்னொரு விடயம் இதனூடாக கிடைத்திருக்கின்றது. அதாவது இந்த செயற்திட்டம் முடிவடைந்த பின்னரும் தாங்களாகவே இவருடைய நிறுவனத்தினுடைய எந்த நிறுவனத்தினுடைய உதவியும் இல்லாமல் தாங்களாகவே தொடர்ச்சியாக தங்களது வியாபார நடவடிக்கைகளை மேற்கொள்ளக்கூடிய ஆற்றலை இப்பொழுது பெற்றிருக்கின்றார்கள். ஆகவே அது எங்களது இந்த திட்டத்தினுடைய ஒரு வெற்றியாக நான் அதனை கருதுகின்றேன். அது மட்டுமில்லாமல் இக்கருத்திட்டத்தில் இருக்கக்கூடியான இன்னும் ஒரு செயற்திட்டமானது ரிவால்விங் லோன். ஆகவே இந்த பயனாளிகள் வந்து தங்களுக்கிடையே சிறு குழுக்களை உருவாக்கி அதனூடாக சேமிப்புகளை திரட்டுவதனூடாக தங்களது முதலீடுகளையும் அவர்களை தாங்களாகவே அந்த முதலீடுகளையும் தயாரிக்கக்கூடியதான ஒரு நிலைமை இவர்களுக்கு உருவாக்கப்பட்டிருக்கின்றது. இது வந்து வெற்றிகரமாக நடைபெற்று வருகின்றது. ஆகவே இவ்வாறான செயற்பாடுகள் எங்களது பிரதேசத்தில் இருக்கக்கூடியதான இத்தகைய பெண்கள் மற்றும் மாற்றுவர்களுடைய முயற்சியாளர்களுக்கு ஒரு வரப்பிரசாதமாக காணப்படுகின்றது. அவர்களுடைய வறுமையினை குறைத்து அவர்களது வாழ்க்கை வந்து அடுத்த கட்டத்திற்கு நகர்ந்து செல்வதற்கு இவ்வாறான iLife தொடர்பான இந்த ப்ரொஜெக்ட் வந்து எங்களது பிரதேச மக்களுக்கு வந்து இது மிகவும் பயனுள்ளதாக காணப்படுகின்றது. ஆகவே இத்தருணத்திலே இந்த செயற்திட்டத்தினை எங்களது பிரதேசத்திலே இதை நடைமுறைப்படுத்தி எங்களது மக்களுடைய வாழ்க்கை தரத்தை முன்னேற்றுவதற்கு பங்களித்த வேர்ல்ட் விஷன் நிறுவனத்திற்கு நான் இத்தருணத்திலே அது நன்றியை தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறேன். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
Thank you, Mr. Maridas, for your insights as well as for the support you have provided us for this project.
Thank you.
I'd like to call upon Bala Dinesh, who is the meal specialist for the iLife project, to provide an English translation of the insights that Mr. Marida shared. Tinesh?
Yeah, thanks, Milka. Hope you can hear me. Yeah, it is raining.
Yes,
I'm
perfect.
just summarizing this in English. The Ilife project included women-led families and vulnerable women with disabilities and increased their social status in the community. The journey of transformation model made positive changes to inclusion. The inclusion of not only the beneficiaries, but also their families in the process led to positive changes. Also, I have to mention that their social status was found to be low due to the economic backwardness. Their livelihoods are increasing with the condition of this specific program, and their social status is relatively high now. The steering committee was seen as critical in implementing the project, analyzing past activities of NGOs, and reflection and implementing annual plans. Such activities led the success of this project. GRT sessions were conducted not only for the beneficiaries but also for the government. So we recommend the series of awareness sessions will be applicable to the people in the other location in near future. Need assessment was carried out to find out which products are suitable for area. Then products such as mania, mushroom, and groundnut were selected accordingly. Producer group set up and technical training prepared them effective rather than individual assistance programs. Valuation programs and experience sharing events, establishments of valuation centers, and technical assistance were provided. So, local market facilitator appointed to enhance sales of production, and it makes marketing easy. Also, it was able to form divisional enterprise forum, unite all the entrepreneurs under the divisional secretariat, and we are able to identify the challenges and provide them with support and support. Finally, Persian maintained excellent communication with government officials involved in the project to make this a sustained intervention. And we believe people will enjoy the benefit and sustain their ongoing empowerment. Yeah, that's the translation of Marida's Jeba Yuran. Thank you.
Thank you, Balatinesh. Next, I'd like to invite Melissa Sprake, who is the Country Impact Manager for World Vision Australia. She will share with us about the ilife project learnings from the view of the support office. So over to you, Melissa.
Hi, sorry about that. Just looking for the mute button. Yes, thank you so much. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, fine.
Great. Actually, I'm going to just move it. Yeah, I'm really happy to be able to join this event, and I really appreciate this opportunity and to have been a part of this project towards the end. So yeah, I'd like to just share some of the key learnings and highlights and the significance of this project from a World Vision Australia perspective. I joined as the Country Impact Manager late in the project after following on from Isabel, who along with the project team had already done all the groundwork and been implementing for some time. So yeah, my job was quite easy really, having all that set up and having it done so well. The ilife project has been an exceptional project for World Vision Australia, as many others have already said, as well as the partnership with World Vision Lanka. It's been a privilege for me to be a part of it for almost 2 years now. And although sadly I haven't been able to visit, I feel like I have, because we've had so many calls and worked so intensively on so many things together. As we can see from the great evaluation results and from what you've heard today, what this project has been able to achieve is really impressive. there's too much for me to really mention here in this presentation today. So I'll just try and highlight some of the key points, which are a mix of lessons and just highlights and things that we think are, important from our perspective. I actually just put some of these quotes up from the evaluation, which we were hearing, your video earlier on in the presentation, the inner voices, and then just now. Maybe I don't need to say it again, but I'll just, it's very moving to hear the actual impact on the people that have benefited from the project and the most vulnerable. So I'll just quickly read it. I have 3 children, and I used to worry about how I could educate and take care of them. Now I am confident I can manage women head of household and produce a group member. Before, the community rejected us, but the project changed this. People now accept and respect us after they realised they hadn't given us opportunities to grow. Man with a disability. My husband used to make all the decisions, but now we do this together. JOT participant. Women now take the lead on community work and were very active during the elections in my area, project assistant. I just wanted to highlight that because, this is what it's all about. And it's just wonderful to hear the impact that you've had as a project. So from a support office perspective, some of the things that really stood out, I firstly, just the importance of moving beyond income in this project to strive for economic empowerment and to have this intentional focus on inclusion of women and people with disabilities in economic development has led to such holistic outcomes for the most vulnerable to improve their income, access agency, and have these positive shifts in social and gender norms. As well, the importance of just this really strong integrated twin track project design from the very beginning of the project, combined with this implementation approach, which Isabel mentioned and others, that learns and adapts and has, as it's progressed. So from what I've heard and from what I've seen, it's just worked really well and been great to see how the project team has been able to adapt and learn along the way to the point that all the different outcomes were able to become quite cohesive and integrated and lots of learnings along the way. The ilife project has also been critical for the development of World Vision Australia's and now the World Vision International's new Women's Economic Empowerment Framework and Program Quality Assurance Standards to be launched later this year. The project's shown that our local value chain and market systems development approach can be adapted to be inclusive when there is mainstreaming and targeted models to promote agency, norm change work at both the household level and the community level. And as has already been said, when it's intentional and resourced financially. ilife, as has already been mentioned by Isabel, has been a very important part of piloting World Vision Savings for Transformation model. And wonderful to see it done with such great success. I think there were 172 savings groups formed over the life of the project, with 85% of them female, 13% people with disability, and 14% women-headed households, and around 90% of the members rejoining groups after they had completed their 12 months. The ilife project has been exceptional in setting standards and good practices that World Vision Australia can share with the rest of the ANCP and Australian aid community. Thanks to the strong technical support from various, from World Vision Australia, from the consultants, from the team, and strong implementation to make it all work. And these strong practices have been able to be documented well, which is, an amazing thing and something that we don't always have in projects. So this is really important for us as World Vision Australia to be able to share these learnings and successes. And your diligence as a project team and as the World Vision Lanka office to managing this and organising it and keeping such great records is really impressive. And also the support from Promundo, Value for Women and CBM was key in this, as they were able to document the learnings so clearly and so well, which is something I think is often quite hard for us to manage to do as well in a project, in most projects. So yeah, one of the most important things of all is the strong management and operations of the project. Such great results could not be possible without this. Yeah, so I think, you know, the project involves such an enormous number of partners and people involved, technical advisors from World Vision Australia, consultants, Promundo, Value for Women and CBM, and as well as many other, you know, the national office and etc. So it was quite a impressive coordination job that the project team did, and we're really grateful for that, and especially considering the COVID situation, the way you managed that, the way the project was able to adapt and continue to still see amazing results is really impressive, along with coordinating and managing this final evaluation to such a high standard with so many people involved. Not the usual evaluation level of detail that we normally have, but it's so exciting to see great results at the end of it. So I think it was all worth it. And yeah, the one of the highlights for me is just seeing all of us work together. So I think it's just been a really great team effort, working with, you know, quite a number of World Vision Australia technical advisors, the ANCP team from here, all the staff in the project team, and the consultants on the project. It's really, yeah, been amazing to see everybody do their part and work together. And I know it hasn't always been easy. I haven't always done it perfectly, but yeah, I think that's been, yeah, really a really great highlight of this project. So finally, I just like to say a quick thanks to the ilive project team. Your work has been amazing. Your passion, your dedication is incredible to see. For Rojas, for your amazing leadership and dedication to this project, right through to the end. Even though you moved to another role at the end, you still continue to oversee it and ensure that it stayed at the high level it did. And for JR for taking over at this late stage in the project, and for all your work through all the years. It's been great working with you, and you've done an excellent job. And to all the Prabha, Suthesh, Shanti, Tinesh, for your passion and your dedication, it really shines through, and I can see that you've made a big difference in the lives of the beneficiaries. And yeah, just the whole project team are really very appreciative, and it's, yeah, great for us at World Vision Australia just to see that taken so seriously and valued so much. And for World Vision Lanka office for prioritising this project, for making the most of this opportunity. This ANCP funding that we get is, yeah, so important and so valuable to us, and really thankful that you've been able to make the most of this and come out with all these amazing learnings. And yeah, look forward to seeing how you share that and promote that within your other programs. And for Promundo, Value for Women, CBM, thank you for coming on this journey with us. It's been really, yeah, really impressed with your patience and all your amazing support and your graciousness. And yeah, and as well, all the World Vision Australia technical people. So thanks so much for making us so proud for this project. And yeah, I trust that, yeah, you'll continue to make use of all these learnings and continue on the great work. So I will finish there. Thank you for this chance to speak.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for your words of encouragement and for the support World Vision Australia has provided all throughout for this project. And while it is sad that the project is coming to an end, I'm sure we can certainly build upon the learnings and go on to improve services for communities in other places as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Melissa. Next up, we had planned to have Mr. Parameshwaran, who is the Deputy Director for the Department of Agriculture in Trincomalee. He is a member of the Project Steering Committee as well. And he was supposed to speak a few words on the inner voices from a government stakeholder perspective. Unfortunately, he informed us this morning that he has an urgent engagement at a high-level ministry. And so he did provide us with his notes to share in this presentation. So I'd like to call upon Sudesh Kumara to read his speech on behalf of Mr. Parameshwaran. And Sudesh is the Economic Development Technical Advisor for the Ilife project. Sudesh?
Thank you, Milika. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read about the inner voice of the Deputy Director of Agriculture, Mr. Parameshwaran. I'm really glad to speak in this event as one of this steering committee member for this Ilife project. Actually, I have been involved with this project since 2017. This is one of the impacted projects because it has initiated some sustainable component in the farming community. Particularly, this project has formed 3 different local value chains, which no one has started yet. I could remember that World Vision staff met me on year 2017 and discussed about the local value chain development and asked me a support from the agriculture extension side. I also accept the request and advice to my field team to cooperate with the World Vision team. In this local value chain development, we have formed a producers group at the field level. According to that, we have formed a number of producers groups for mushroom, manioc, and groundnut cultivations. I want to say that the World Vision staff have clear idea on inclusion for a person with disability and the woman-headed family. Therefore, I clearly informed that our field team to consider these particular target beneficiaries as much as possible. Actually, this idea is really valued because these target beneficiaries are generally ignored by the other societies. Therefore, this is an opportunity for us to show some different achievement to our department, and it is one of the requirements of the Sri Lankan government. Following producers group formation, World Vision has taken another step to establish the value addition centers in the village level. This is another innovative approach in this project, where we able to accommodate number of persons with disability and women-headed family members in a line of job creation. I have observed that there is a sustainable model in this local value chain process, that every producers group have a capacity and also identity. Therefore, I have strong confidence that these producers group will continue their production, and Department of Agriculture also will definitely monitor their progress, and we will help them to expand their production in the future. As another key event of this project implementation, that Department of Agriculture and World Vision Lanka have jointly formed a production village by collectively formed a number of producers groups in particular locations. This is actually a long-term sustainable model, and which will impact to the nationwide performance. Actually, I'm really proud to be as a steering committee member because the World Vision has listened to my advice and deployed a successful project in the Trincomalee district. I thank you World Vision Lanka and World Vision Australia to bring this valuable opportunity for our vulnerable community, especially for the person with disabilities and woman-headed family. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. Next, I'd like to invite our final speaker for today, Shelby Stephenson. She is the Director for the International Resource Development and Management team here at World Vision Lanka. And she'll share a little bit about the learnings, impact, and benefits from World Vision Lanka and the final word for the water. Thanks, Shelby.
Thank you. And wow, I feel very humbled and privileged to be the last on the list today. So I am conscious of the time, but please indulge me for just 5 more minutes. I do want to say just a huge thanks on behalf of World Vision Lanka and the entire iLife team to everyone who has been here with us today, listening and speaking, sharing your reflections and learnings. It's been incredibly valuable for us. I've certainly learnt a lot. I think we can all agree that the iLife project is something that we are all incredibly proud of, and something that definitely would not have been at all possible without all of the partners, consultants, and stakeholders that are present here today. The project was absolutely ambitious in its goals, but has achieved incredible results. And I think that we've heard from everyone today that we definitely have learned a lot from the models and approaches that were used. And I really hope that both World Vision Lanka, World Vision International, and all of our partners can take forward the lessons, learnings, and models in the future. I do want to say a huge thank you to both DFAT and World Vision Australia. I think that a huge amount of the success of this project is due to the flexible nature of the ANCP funding mechanism, and that is because of the partnership that exists between the Australian government and World Vision Australia. The flexibility has really allowed this project to take a human-centered approach to adapt and change and learn throughout the project to make it as successful as it has been. The project has taken a very holistic approach and definitely proved to promote an inclusive and self-help culture, whilst providing both practical and tangible incentives for marginalised people. I think we can all agree that the outcomes from the evaluation and the discussion today show that the project really enabled vulnerable women and people with disabilities to earn income and improve their lives and their families whilst becoming more independent and giving them confidence, whilst also gaining respect from their community and generating social acceptance. And with that, the resilience that is very much needed for life in Sri Lanka. I do know that everyone on this call today has not yet seen or read the evaluation, or maybe hasn't quite had time to read through it all. So allow me just 3 minutes to share some of my favourite findings and hopefully tease you just a little bit to read the full report when you do get it. So the partnerships and project that we've highlighted today have really enabled sustainable and inclusive financial access for women and people with disabilities. 96% of the Savings for Transformation groups were still active at the end of the project, and 76% of them were on their second cycle, so really showing sustainability. Furthermore, as a result of those Savings for Transformation groups, the percentage of female group members reporting confidence in their financial literacy has increased by 120%. ilife has really high an adoption rate of the value chain activities amongst vulnerable groups. 100% of female producers, including those women with disabilities, report that they felt more confident in the production abilities as a result of the training provided through the project. Quite importantly, the adoption of the techniques in the project, the rate was highest for women with disabilities and female heads of households. And as a result of these increased capacities, the productivity of the producer groups was enhanced. For example, groundnut producer groups increased their productivity from 400 kilograms per acre to 700 kilograms per acre. The overall economic benefits of the project are something we can all certainly learn from and be proud of. And as a result, of the strengthening of both producer groups and the value addition centres, there's an 80% increase in the total household income for MPI poor households and 54% increase for female-headed households. The second thing that we've heard a lot about today is the incredible Jessie transformative interventions in ilife. The project has really actively challenged negative gender and social norms, the unequal power relations, stereotypes, and discriminatory practices such as confinement of women's role into the home, high domestic workloads, which lead to a lack of time for livelihoods and skills training. But the project combated this by recognising that Jessie transformation occurs at an individual household level and at a systems level, worked with men and couples through JOT and men care, and encouraged shared responsibility through promoting discussions with a key objective of attitude change by using community change. I'll give you a few highlights from the evaluation just to keep your interest. These initiatives led to a 21% increase in the percentage of men who agreed that it was perfectly acceptable for women to work outside the home. The attitude change is also reflected in the percentage of households that reported men were involved in daily childcare and unpaid housework, which increased 57% and 24% respectively. There was also a 150% increase in the average number of hours spent daily by women on income generating activities. There was also a notable improvement in women's ability to make economic and financial decisions free of coercion, with an average increase of 36% in the percentage of women reporting decision-making power over their productive inputs and activities. There was also a really clear shift in community attitudes of vulnerable women and people with disabilities from being unproductive and dependent to being active producers and contributors to their community. Results in the evaluation show 91%, I'll say that again, 91% of community members felt comfortable working with people with disabilities, which is an improvement from 26% at the start. Finally, the evaluation found that the increase in the percentage of respondents with disabilities who reported feeling confident to speak publicly about community issues in front of others increased from 39% to 95%. And the percentage of people with disabilities reporting their ability to make their own decisions on issues that were important to them increased from 47% to 90%. So just a few highlights to back up with evidence some of the amazing learnings we've heard today. For me, the significant learnings from this project for World Vision Lanka, I have just 4 that I will highlight. Firstly, taking the time to plan and consult to deeply understand the context and the challenges at the design stage of this project led to a really strong twin track approach that was ambitious but also realistic to implement. The benefits of that twin track approach in addressing social norms and economic development together is really what allowed us to be so successful. We had amazing results in both the income generation, economic empowerment sector, as well as the attitudinal barriers in community change. And my personal belief is that doing either one of those alone would not have given us the same results. My third learning is that this project was successful because we were able to be honest with ourselves about our strengths and weaknesses, which leads me to my final lesson, is the importance of partnership. We could not have achieved this any one organization alone. So working with the stakeholders that we've all heard from today has really made us stronger, supported World Vision in our weaknesses, and has led to incredible deep change, but also a huge amount of institutional learning. So to everyone here today, I really do hope that we can build out these learnings into future projects in Sri Lanka and around the world, and demonstrate the sustainable impact from these approaches that we've talked about. To the wonderful partners, consultants, and contributors that we've had today, really, truly, deeply thank you for sharing your lessons and reflections with us so honestly. It's certainly been an amazing learning for me and for the rest of the team. So in my final vote of thanks, I say thank you for joining us on this journey. It's been an incredible learning for everyone, both from a very, very long time coming, and it is very sad to see the end of this project, but also to everyone, a huge congratulations on making this so successful, both for women and people with disabilities in Sri Lanka, and for World Vision as an organisation to strengthen our inclusive approaches. So thank you for joining us, and please have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are in the world.
Thank you, Shelby, for those wonderful words. And yeah, so with that, the meeting will be adjourned. And if you all have any questions for the team, please do reach out, feel free to reach out to the team, and they'll be happy to respond to any questions through email to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend this event. Have a good rest of the evening or afternoon or morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in this event today, everybody. Lovely to see you all and connect with you again. Until next time, bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It was a great event. Bye-bye.